Okay, I think everything's good to go. How's everyone doing? Yeah, so we got some pretty big news here. The JLOT, this thing, the floating Gaza humanitarian pier, it's a done deal. It's a wrap. The U.S. military, I think, is just done and over with it. It's not forever done for. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. It might still be operating in Israel at some point. But as of right now, the U.S. military is just done with operations as far as this pier in Gaza. So we'll get into all of this. This is some rather fresh news. I'm doing this live right now, so I apologize if it's a little choppy. Thank you for being here. Make sure you turn on your notifications, leave your comments and likes, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very, very upset about this, especially the people who need the humanitarian aid as well. And I'll try to sift through the comments since you guys are here as well, so if I miss your comment, just re-comment. And thank you guys for being here. I see all you guys. All right, first things first, Reuters was like first on board to report on this. U.S. military ends Gaza floating pier mission to bring aid to Palestinians by the sea. First things first, yes, it's a floating pier, but let's actually call it by its real name, a JLOT. Hope you guys can see this okay, and hope you guys can hear me okay as well. Make sure if you're in the stream, please like the stream and comment. It definitely helps out a lot. And I will be posting this video if you miss anything. So joint logistics over the shore, JLOT. We'll get into why there was a JLOT, what went wrong. We'll get into all of this. What is a JLOT? U.S. Army and U.S. Navy forces organized and equipped to conduct joint ship-to-shore operations where fixed port facilities are inadequate or unavailable. A JLOT can offload equipment and cargo in stream and deliver cargo to restricted port, an expeditionary floating pier, or a bare beach employing shallow draft transport watercraft. Very simple, people. It's literally a mobile port that brings stuff to shore, to troops, humanitarian aid efforts. Yeah. The only issue is, and we'll get to this in a bit, a little bit of a spoiler. I don't think the U.S. military, and very recently at all, thank you for being a member, Devin. And once again, if you are a member, it definitely helps out a lot. Helps support out the channel. Thank you so much. And I think it's pretty cheap. Isn't it like 99 cents or something? Yeah. I don't think the U.S. military in recent times has employed a JLOT in a combat zone that's not in control of the U.S. military. Total security is pretty much up to Israel. We'll get into that again. There's a lot that we got to get into. So first things first, today is the 17th. This was on the 16th, just to give you an idea of how fast the U.S. military said, yeah, I think we're done, guys. Here we go. This is on the 16th. Pat Ryder.
An open Indo-Pacific region. Readout of the call has been posted to defense.gov. Finally, I know many of you have been following the status of the JLOTS humanitarian mission, or temporary pier. At this time, the temporary pier remains in Ashdod, and a potential re-anchoring date has not been set. As we've said, the pier has always been intended as a temporary solution, and it will conclude its mission soon. But as of today, I don't have any announcements to make in terms of when the mission will officially conclude.
That was on the 16th, yesterday at the time of this live stream. Now today it's officially over with. But I just wanted to give you guys a visual of where exactly the pier has been since June. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay, yeah. In Ashdod, Israel. So all the way up here. Gaza's down here. I don't know the exact mileage. It's probably no less than maybe 20 minutes away drive. So yeah, this is where the pier has been this whole time. I don't think a lot of people actually knew that. Let me know in the comments if you did know that. But as far as operations and stuff like that, nothing has actually been happening since June. And again, we'll get into why that is as well. So, okay. Now, the first reason why the pier even came about, or JLOT, was this right here. I don't know if you guys remember, but at one point, the U.S. military was conducting airdrops for Palestinians over Gaza. And these airdrops, although they were kind of working, they were only providing about 18,000 people, which was not enough. And so people were complaining because the U.S. military at the time, which maybe about 5 months ago, was like, yeah, we really want to get involved. We want to start helping Palestinians. And somebody said, I thought it sunk. We'll get to that in a minute as well. This was just not adequate. Also, airdrops are very dangerous. I'm almost positive there was a report where somebody got injured or Palestinians were getting injured. Also, you need a pretty wide open area, which could be rather dangerous as well. And Israel had to secure wide open lanes with their like versions of Pathfinders and stuff. So there was like a lot of coordination going on. You can't fit enough logistics. So the U.S. military then said, let's go to this. We got to go to JLOT. But again, very temporary. So first things first, let's talk about the fact of what was going wrong. According to the U.S. military, one of the very first things that started going wrong were these waves right here. Out of nowhere, there was like massive swells, a lot of waves, a storm came through, and then you had a very famous picture that I thought I had synced up for you guys. Where's it at? Oh, I don't have it. Oh, yeah, right here. Yeah, this is a section of the JLOT, and this is U.S. military members. There were U.S. military members also just kind of chilling and sitting around. And so that almost became an international incident real quick. So yeah, to Just Mark, who commented on the live video, yes, semi-correct. It didn't sink, but it definitely sort of fell apart because these are floating pieces. They're not really going to sink. So that was issue number one, is that the U.S. military essentially was complaining that, look, we can't have any adequate time to actually do maintenance on these things. I'd like to compare the fact that on every single Monday in the entire U.S. Army, there is a widespread amount of maintenance called Motor Pool Monday, where you're working on Humvees, you're working on all equipment, making sure your equipment is good. It's very difficult to do any sort of maintenance on this J-Lot right here when you're in the middle of a war zone. You have waves going up and down, and you have a lot of mouths that want food and humanitarian aid, and this essentially is what the biggest issue was. What else do we got? So here's the other really big issue that was occurring as well for the U.S. military as to why this mission was ending. The trucks were not even able to get into Palestinian territory anywhere in Gaza. I'm sure many of you are aware that a lot of the trucks were actually raided. Some of them were flipped over. A lot of trucks, a lot of stolen goods that was occurring as well. So there was a massive buildup of humanitarian aid in warehouses. They couldn't get enough truck drivers to actually get the trucks where they needed to be. People didn't want to do the job because it's too dangerous. Like there was a lot of issues, and I think the U.S. Army was starting to realize, because we cannot control this thing. We don't want to be a part of this thing, so we're going to get the heck out of here. And to be fair, and I can show you guys in the article, the U.S. military actually provided a lot of humanitarian aid. I think the number is about 20 million, and I'll go check that number real quick here. But yeah, this was also a massive, massive factor. It's not that humanitarian aid wasn't making it in, and it's not that the U.S. military was not doing their job. They were doing their job. It was the fact that there was just humanitarian aid laying around everywhere, and it was actually becoming such an issue that it was a security risk. All that humanitarian aid could have been attacked. There was just stuff laying around, and it became a pretty dangerous situation for the troops on the J-Lot. But this is the direct announcement. The U.S. military announced on Wednesday that its mission to install and operate a temporary floating pier off the coast of Gaza was complete, formally ending an extraordinary but troubled effort to bring humanitarian aid to Palestinians. The pier, announced by President Joe Biden during a televised address to Congress in March, was a massive endeavor that took about 1,000 U.S. forces to execute, which is wild, using all those resources, and all of a sudden it's done for. Aid began flowing via the pier to Gaza in May, an operation aimed at helping avert famine after months of war between Israel and Hamas. And again, a really big thing is that a lot of people were saying that this was a mere political move to make Joe Biden look good, or to at least try to be somewhat in the middle to help Israel and help the Palestinians. But bad weather and distribution challenges inside Gaza limited the effectiveness of what the U.S. military says was its biggest aid delivery effort ever in the Middle East. So this is actually, again, this is the biggest effort ever in the Middle East. All eyes on the U.S. military, and this is sort of happening, yeah. Somebody wrote, Savage Raccoon, also some of the food was rotten from waiting in the sun too much. I'm sure that is, but I don't have any way to confirm that in this article, but I'm sure that's what was happening. Without a doubt, I know for a fact, one of the biggest issues the U.S. military was having was that there was this stuff just laying around and nothing was being pushed or moved. The pier was only operational for about 20 days. Again, this is the biggest operation, but for 20 days. The maritime surge mission involved the Pier is complete, so there's no more need to use the Pier. Navy Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, the deputy commander of the U.S. Central Command, told a news briefing. Cooper said efforts to distribute... Here's the big one. Cooper said efforts to distribute aid to Gaza arriving by sea would now shift to the established port of Ashdod in Israel. At least 5 million pounds of aid, which are either in Cyprus or on ships, will be going to Ashdod in the coming days. So there still will be aid coming through. Our assessment is that the temporary pier has achieved its intended efficiency to surge a very high volume of aid into Gaza and ensure that aid reaches the civilians in Gaza in a quick manner. Cooper said, adding that nearly 20 million pounds of aid was delivered to Gaza, but I don't think anyone's going to really care about that number, considering most people are going to laugh at the fact, and I'm just being super honest here, that this entire mission was over. Even though the U.S. military, I would say, actually fulfilled their duties and mission, you can only do so much until, like, I'm not blaming it on Israel, I'm not blaming it on the humanitarian trucks, but there doesn't seem to be any synchronicity as far as like completing the entirety of a mission after the fact of getting the humanitarian aid on shore, getting it from the shore, and getting it to the people. That end portion, it doesn't seem like they actually had an adequate plan. The Pier became a sore point in Congress, where Republicans branded it as a political stunt by Biden, who was under pressure from fellow Democrats to do more to aid Palestinians after months of staunchly supporting Israel's punishing war on Hamas. And you know what? I think from there, I pretty much am going to end it, because, yeah, the one thing that really bothers me about this is that at the end of the day, this is definitely going to make the U.S. military look extremely bad. Even though they did everything they could do, they did what they were told to do, I think they were sort of set up for disaster at the beginning, because, like, they're entrusting their allies to provide the security. They weren't able to do any sort of adequate... any adequate, like, fixing of the pier, maintenance of the pier, anything like that. And the fact that, like, allied forces are not delivering the goods to the Palestinians, that's not on the U.S. military. But you know how it goes. It's pretty easy to pick on the United States, pretty easy to pick on the U.S., and I'm sure in the coming days that is what we are going to see. So that's essentially what happened. It's pretty simple. Bad weather, lack of security, and not fulfilling the end of the mission, as far as volunteer groups trying to get truckers, as far as Israel trying to push out the humanitarian aid. That just wasn't happening, and the U.S. military is not going to be a floating duck in the middle of the Mediterranean. So, yeah, that's essentially what happened. So, I appreciate you guys being here. Shorter live stream. I'm going to post this video if you want to rewatch it if you missed anything. And, yeah, I appreciate all you guys. Thank you for being here on a later stream, and we will see you all later. Thank you so much for everything, and peace.